You're tuning in to Creepy Time, where we bring you chilling, creepy stories and eerie urban legends every day at 6 p.m. To support Creepy Time, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments so we can discuss the story together. Now let's dive into today's tale. Rules for driving a taxi at night. Daniel Weber sat stiffly on a cracked concrete bench beneath the flickering sodium lamp outside the garage of Ironclad Cab Company. The air was thick with humidity, a lingering haze from summer storms clung to the pavement. He stared at the dull glow of the Ironclad Cab Company sign, its neon red letters buzzing, sputtering like an electrical cough in the night. His shirt, once pristine white, now stuck to his back with sweat. He wiped his brow, and silence settled heavier than the city skyline. It had been exactly 2 months since the steel fabrication warehouse on South Clark Street had collapsed under financial ruin. Daniel had worked there for 5 years, driving forklifts, welding, doing odd maintenance work to keep his young family afloat. When the plant shut down without warning, he'd received a token severance, 3 weeks' pay, and a bouquet of hollow words. Meanwhile, his wife Elisa and their son Marcus remained at home waiting. Rent stacked up, lights stayed on longer than money. Necessity had cornered him. A heavy door slid open behind Daniel with a metallic rumble. He flinched, half expecting rain, but nothing fell. From the dim light stepped Mr. Gordon Clay, the cab company's owner. At 60, Clay looked older. Gaunt cheeks, leathered skin, lines so deep they might have been carved from years of midnight shifts and whispered tragedies. Daniel stood as Clay approached. He extended a hand. "Daniel Weber," Clay said softly, "I see you've arrived. I wish it were under better circumstances." Daniel nodded. "Thank you for giving me this shift, Mr. Clay. I need to—" Clay interrupted with a raised eyebrow, silent enough to fill the alley. Without fanfare, Clay reached into his coat and pulled out a small slip of paper, handing it to Daniel. The paper trembled and Clay's grip wrinkled, stained, brittle. Daniel unfolded it under the orange streetlight. His words were harsh yet simple. Rules to follow. Never pick up fares from Hollow Pine Cemetery after 2:00 a.m. If someone gives you an address that doesn't exist, refuse the ride. If a passenger disappears in your rear view mirror, don't turn around. Never accept money from someone whose face you've never seen. Daniel's mind flared with disbelief. Yet, each rule felt like a challenge, a dare. He looked up at Clay. "Superstition?" Daniel asked quietly. "Kinda sounds like ghost rules." Clay's eyes didn't waver. "I've lost 3 drivers last year, 2 the year before. None honored those rules. Now you take this job, and you follow them. Don't question why." Daniel's voice cracked. "Shouldn't we call the police? Investigate?" Clay let out a harsh laugh. "What would you say? Ghosts got to my drivers? Supernatural hijackings? The police don't consider spooks. They want evidence. Documentation, cause of death. You're driving at night, just do it." Clay turned toward the quiet street. Silence filled the gap. Those rules, they were written in blood. He dropped the keys. They clinked against the concrete. "Car B is yours. Your shift lasts 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Company takes 30%, you get 70%. Try not to lose yourself in the midnight." The opening draws tension from stoic obligations, setting the rules as a binding contract charged with fear. Clay embodies stoic pragmatism laced with dread. Daniel feels obligated but skeptical. The seed of dread lies not in ghost stories but in fragments of ghostly confession, written in blood inside the night. Daniel slid behind the wheel of car-bob battered white Toyota Camry dented on the fender. Side mirrors looked scratched. The upholstery inside had a faint musty smell, stale rubber, damp seam, hint of mothballs. He turned the ignition, the engine coughed, then hummed steady. The digital meter blinked, 0.00. Chicago twinkled outside like broken jewels. Neon lights buzzed along South Ashland. Signs of 24-hour diners glowed yellow. Streetlight shadows danced against rain. Slick pavement. Daniel shifted into gear and pulled onto the avenue. The first few fares were innocuous. A nurse leaving Mercy Hospital, a bartender from a Southside backpack slight with exhaustion, 2 warehouse workers heading for a night shift. Conversation was polite but mechanical. They paid fares, took coffee tips, disappeared. All the while, Daniel felt eyes on him. The rules in his pocket weighed heavier than change. At exactly 11:05 p.m., at a quiet corner near South Ashland and Archer, a woman flagged him down. She wore a simple white dress, vintage cut, ankle length, sleeves flowing. Her dark hair hung straight. Her shoes were pristine, clean, unpaired with city grime. She climbed into the back seat without glancing his way. A gentle hush filled the cab. "Where to?" Daniel asked. She watched the streetlights pass. "O'Hare," she said softly. "Late flight? Heading home. No extra detail, no warmth." He drove through the expressway, overhead signs flashing. She paid exact fare, took no change, no words. The cab stopped at Terminal 2, doors opened. For a moment, she paused in the doorway. "Be careful driving at night." Then she vanished. Daniel didn't move. The engine idled. The echo of her sentence connected with Clay's solemn warnings. He swallowed, forced his gaze ahead, drove on. At 1:00 a.m., Daniel pulled into Joey's diner. Neon red letters flickered above the windows. The whole building seemed half asleep. Steam curled from the kitchen's vent. The scent, burnt coffee, old grease, lingering tobacco. Daniel bought a small black coffee, found a corner booth by the window. In the seat next to him sat an older driver, Russell sweat-soaked jacket, grizzled beard, hands shaking slightly. He cleared his throat. "You got the note?" Russell asked, watching Daniel's pocket. Daniel nodded, whispered, "These are they're serious?" Russell leaned in. His breath smelled of stale cigarette. "Serious? I saw Harlan die in his seat, eyes wide, mouth open, mirror fogged up when he passed Hollow Pines." He paused, lowering voice. "She said she was visiting her husband's grave. He'd been dead for a year. Today was the anniversary. Cemetery should have been locked since 6 o'clock, but Shesh was let in. Harlan just screamed. Then nothing." Daniel's pulse hammered. He recalled his own mother's funeral, the cold headstone he'd held at 3 a.m. Sympathy formed into dread. They sat until the clock edged toward 1:20. Then Daniel finished the coffee, tipped his cup, and left. Real World Echo adapted anecdote. A Suburban Tribune column from 1979 describes a driver named Ralph who picked up a young blonde woman in white near Resurrection Cemetery. She directed him onto Archer Avenue. He stopped. She exited, then vanished. He insisted the car door remained shut, never opened. Later, he learned she had no address on file. Her disappearance remains unsolved. Driving rain began again as Daniel entered the cab. He checked his watch. 1:55 a.m. The city had emptied. Buildings looked darker. Streetlights flared. The shadow of Hollow Pine Cemetery gate came into view. Tall wrought iron, flaked paint, rusted spikes. A sign read, "Cemetery closed 7 p.m., 5 a.m. Yellow tape fluttered. He approached the entrance and slowed. Rule 1, no cemetery fares after 2 a.m. He passed silently, but then, out of misstep or mercy, a figure stood just outside the gate under a dim street lamp. She wore white again, soaking wet, hair dark, unchanged, no movement except the slight raise of her hand. Daniel's breath shuddered. His heart twisted. He pulled over, opened the rear door. She slid in wordless. The meter lit as though expecting the fare from the moment she sat. Rule 1 ignored. Rule 2 promised. If address non-existent, refuse. Where to? Daniel asked, voice taut. She whispered, voice hollow, home. She named the street Daniel. Checked. Oakwood driven not on GPS. The area beyond looked abandoned. Cracked driveways, empty lots, no house numbers, no lamps. Daniel weighed hesitation. He looked at the note inside his breast pocket. Each rule whispered, follow me or follow your fate. He reversed directions gently, but as he drove, she didn't speak again. When he returned to the Oakwood lot, he killed the engine. Silence. Rain pattered. He reached back to offer pay, but the seat was empty. Damp upholstery glistened. On it, 5 $1 bills, wet and flat. He looked in the mirror. No reflection. Nothing. Rule 4. Never accept money from faceless fare. He'd violated it. The car door remained closed. She left or vanished while engine idled. Footsteps appeared outside. Slow, soft slaps on wet asphalt. He didn't turn. Instead, he jammed the key, reversed again, and fled. He shook behind the wheel, heart in chest. City lights blurred. He kept driving until he saw the glow of the parking lot near his apartment, 3:00 a.m. He turned off the engine, shook. The note weighed heavy in chest. Daniel entered his apartment building damp and anxious. His reflection in the cracked hallway mirror startled him. Wide eyes, sweat on brow, sleepless, hollow stare. The framed family photo on his dining table lay face you down. He didn't remember when he'd last looked at it. He dropped keys and note onto a table. Rain dripped from shoulders. At exactly 3:15 a.m., his phone buzzed on the counter with no caller ID. He stared. Lepers of fear stung. He didn't answer. The dialer clicked again. Silent. Then later no dial tone. But the warning felt ancient. He sat alone as dawn approached, the apartment empty. Real or elusive, he realized. He'd been chasing illusions as he drove through darkness. In the morning, Daniel sat at his table with strong coffee and a pale sunrise filtering through dusty blinds. He reached for that note again, the 4 rules, carefully, almost ritualistically. He saw the corners fray, the ink smudged, but each rule burned in memory. He remembered Clay's warning written in blood. He tried calling Elisa's number, but it went straight to voicemail. He messaged her, no response. His stomach knotted. His imagined wife and son had vanished from everything but memory. Daniel realized where his fear really came from. It wasn't ghosts. It was loss. It was the illusion that the safety he'd built, the warehouse job, the apartment, those morning routines was still there. Now, beneath all the terror, there was regret. He punched the phone again, no answer. He turned off the light, closed his eyes, the silence answered. Daniel returned behind the wheel for a second night sometime after sunrise, though exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. He'd far surpassed the boundaries of fear. He'd entered resignation. Each rule felt heavier, more literal. At 10:02 p.m., he flipped the meter on and passed an arcade glowing in violet haze. He tightened his grip. His route took him east into factory districts, shadowed rows of shuttered warehouse frontages, flickering streetlights on Lincoln Avenue. Flickers of memory from the night before spurred hyper-focused alertness. Every passenger stop now felt loaded. Shortly after 11:30 p.m., he pulled over to pick up a lone figure outside the closed Oak Street Farmers Market. Unshaven man in a dull coat, slender build, paid cash, rushed exit. Normal enough but for the minute detail that glanced his rear view. A reflection of another figure, female, gliding past the cab's open door, barely visible amid tent poles and teen graffiti. Daniel's breath caught. He checked his mirror. Empty. The man had already vanished into the shadows. No lingering breath, no trace. Daniel swallowed hard. That night, he called it the barn ghost, a haunting half-glimpse framed against vegetable crates. He stopped at a red light by Ogden Avenue, waiting. A sedan pulled up beside him. The driver, white hair, leather jacket, lean, face-tapped his window. He rolled it down. The man introduced himself as Carl. He whispered, "Change your habits. At 2:03 last week, I stopped to help a lady in white near the graveyard. She vanished. Left my door unlocked. I swore I saw her reflection in my mirror later, but nothing behind me. 2 hours later, I woke on my steering wheel, hospital bed. My car still running. They said I was hypoglycemic. I know I wasn't. My fears stuck to me." Daniel nodded. Carl rolled off as the light turned green. No more words, but the quiet warning hit deep. Back at 1:02 a.m., Daniel found himself drawn to pick up a woman stepping off a bus. She wore black. Umbrella dripped. Her face was partially covered. She asked for Hempstead Avenue. He dropped her quickly, after footsteps echoed. She claimed wrong address, apologized, left. But Daniel wanted to ride. The desire to help twisted with self-preservation. At 1:58 a.m., he idled outside Hollow Pine Cemetery again. The gate looked menacing under dim sodium light. Shadows crawled. At exactly 2:01 a.m., a woman in white emerged again, wet and silent. She did not move her lips, but her presence shook Daniel's instinct. He told her, "I'm sorry, I can't." She tilted her head, eyes dark, droplet falling. The air thickened. He watched but resisted. She softened, almost disappointed, but she stepped back. Fade. Air still. The gate remained shut. Daniel paused at a payphone. He closed his eyes and memories flooded. An early birthday party at Wrigley Field. Smiling Marcus tossing popcorn. Elisa's laughter echoing in hot, windy stands. He had built a life of ordinary love. Now he drove nights, harassed by apparition rules and thin silhouettes outside cemetery gates. The memory of what Thanksgiving dinners felt like intensified his grief. To understand persistence, Daniel visited local ghost forum archives at home. He read about the lady in Ashland Avenue, 1960s, tale of a woman hit by a cab at midnight near Lincoln Park. Driver said he dropped her at home, then she vanished. No record, no obituary. It was similar enough to Daniel's own rise to shatter sleep. Each legend framed vigilance. By 3 a.m., Daniel slowed near Candleport Avenue, rain-slicked terraces. He breathed deep. In the mirror ran shadow movement, white swirl gone. He shut off the meter early, fingerprint trembling on the screen. He realized he skirted rule number 3, but edged perilously defeated. He called in sick the next day, but guilt made him swallow caffeine at home. The rules haunted post-it reminders. Grocery receipts looked old. Coffee machine beeped as if rattling. The following afternoon, Daniel visited funeral homes near Hollow Pines. He watched mourners, felt sorrow. He overheard talk about a family lost at number 13 Elm Street fire. How fire killed 5 in 1990 on Elm Street. Local lore said Patriarch's ghost walked the house at night. Children saw him at windows. He'd seen that address on route logs when he transported that corporate passenger. The line between haunted story and street fact blurred. As night fell again, Daniel crossed streets in reflective neon light. He prepped for his final shift but noticed bells, whispers, footfalls behind him in tunnels near Wacker Drive. He checked around, no one, but chills echoed. He sat in the cab, pulled out the note. Each rule blotted more black. He pulled gloves tight. He promised himself, "I will survive. Not for them, but for me." When Daniel woke the next morning, he was exhausted stiff from sleeping upright on his couch. His eyes were dry and sunken from sleepless nights. He brewed a pot of dark roast coffee, setting the mug on his desk beside his laptop. The 4-rule note peered at him from the tablages curled, ink smudged. He steeled himself. He logged onto the archives of the Chicago Historical Society, local newspapers, police logs, and old folklore blogs. He needed patterns, documentation, anything that mirrored his experience. One documented tale grabbed Daniel's attention: Resurrection, Mary Chicago's most infamous ghost hitchhiker. She first appeared in the late 1930s. A woman in white stepping onto Archer Avenue after a dance, walking past Resurrection Cemetery. Drivers recount that when they reached the gates, Mary vanished, door closed behind her, no footprints, no records of her identity. A folklorist named Richard Crowe compiled dozens of eyewitness accounts. Drivers described her voice as soft, near chant, and her presence colder than Chicago wind. In some stories, mirrors in the car fogged. In others, payments transferred with no signature. Daniel felt a chill knot panic, recognition. He located bulletins about local cab drivers who disappeared or died under strange circumstances. Jake Turner, 1,995, found dead in his cab outside Hollow Pine Cemetery at 2:13 a.m. Police found no external injuries. His eyes stared wide open. He was clutching the steering wheel, engine still running. Keith Harris, 2002, took a fare to a non-existent address east of Elm Street. His phone pinged one final time, then he vanished. 2 days later, he turned up dead near his Carno firm, 'cause determined. Marcus Yates, 2018, vanished after picking up a passenger by Cemetery Road. Cab found idling 30 minutes later. He was never seen again. Although none were associated with Ironclad Cab Company, their stories echoed Daniel's last ride, same ingredients: cemetery, phantom passenger, vanishing act. Daniel discovered an article dated March 1990 in the Chicago Chronicle. Elm Street fire tragedy. 5 perish at number 13 in early hours. The story included a grainy photo of a suited businessman standing before the charred remains. The patriarch's posture and facial features looked hauntingly familiar to the man Daniel drove weeks ago. The professional aura, the monochrome suit, the shiny briefcase. Flames had consumed the house. Smoke inhalation. 5 dead. Local lore held that the spirit of that man haunted Elm Street at night. Lights flickered, cold spots lingered. Children claimed to see his silhouette at window frames. Neighbors reported footsteps and whispers in empty lots. Daniel leaned over the page, pressed his fingertips to the photo. Fear tightened inside. This man matched the passenger's face from the Elm Street ride. He had unknowingly transported a ghost courier. He reviewed the 4 rules again in his notebook. Cemetery after 2 a.m. equals never. Non-existent address equals refuse. Passenger disappears a mirror equals don't turn. Money from unseen face equals not accepted. He realized they weren't arbitrary, each linked to a historical case. Jake Turner's death, Rule 1. Keith Harris's Elm Street vanishing, Rule 2. Unnamed driver who turned back and saw nothing, Rule 3. Driver who accepted faceless fare and disappeared, Rule 4. The rules formed a survival grammar across chaos. Daniel backed up offline copies of each article. He searched for patterns, timestamps clustered around early morning. Each passenger was described as pallid, distant, quiet. Most wore old-fashioned or out-of-time clothing. Their destinations often impossible. In his own ride logs, Daniel matched timestamps: airport pickup at 11:05 p.m., woman in white; cemetery pickup at 1:58 a.m., woman in Oakwood Drive. Even the stranger by the farmer's market at 11:30 p.m. trailed a pale shape, not his fare. He sensed he was part of a continuum, a reluctant actor playing out deja vu. Compulsion urged him to return not as passenger driver, but as pilgrim. He parked near the Hollow Pines gate at 1:30 a.m. He sat inside his car, rain gently drumming roof. He watched iron gates rippling in breeze. He stared at the yellow caution tape waving. He slid out, stepping up to those gates. The cool metal-stung fingertips. He traced the outlines of rusty spikes. He breathed in cold air, no presence, just wind. He closed his eyes, heard a whisper of footsteps behind. He turned quickly, no one, just shadows. When he reopened his eyes, the gate flapped closed. He drove unbroken, tired, but determined. At 2:00 a.m., phone buzzed. No caller ID. He answered, anticipating dread. Whispered voice, slightly mocking. You know the rules. No response. Then, or tonight you become history. Line went dead. Daniel froze. Silence became unbearable. He ended shift early and drove home before dawningly to sleep fitfully and wake at dawn with heaviness in chest. Back at home, Daniel considered childhood memories. Fishing weekends with his father in Indiana lakes, salmon, colored sunrises, laughter bouncing off the water. His dad had died young heart attack, leaving Daniel and his mother. Later, his mother passed away at his side when he was 18. Daniel never believed in ghosts until grief taught him otherwise. He stared at the candles he lit for his parents on his apartment windowsill. The wax had dripped into grotesque patterns. Memories came with guilt. Moments he didn't say goodbye. Lunches skipped. Fights left unsaid. Now terror was rooted in unfinished stories' blood. Soaked farewell. He looked at webcam of his cab's nightly log. He reviewed routes, fares, odd pickups. He calculated only 3 hours remain until a full cycle of danger resets. He mapped out streets, Elm Street, Wacker Drive, Lincoln Park, Oakwood Drive cluster. He resolved, tonight he will not be reactive. He would reclaim agency. He gathered a flashlight, folded note of rules, his phone, and sat in cab at exactly 9:55 p.m. He turned off the radio. He prepared for shock, but resolved to choose. Back in Joey's diner just before midnight, Daniel slipped into his usual corner booth. The old neon sign buzzed overhead. Tonight, instead of just Russell, 2 more cab drivers joined him, Mark and Eliza, both night shift veterans. They called it an informal ghost driver support meeting. Mark then, hoodie zip tight, eyes dull, spoke first. Mark quietly, I picked up a woman near Elm Street last March, dressed white, hands wrapped around her knees. She asked for Elm 13, thing gone. I reported missing money. She left 3 bills. When I went back, house burned 30 years ago. That house, the same number, it's haunted. I closed my cab door and ran. Eliza, a brunette in her 40s with short hair and scarf, chimed in. Eliza, years ago, I drove by Hollow Pines. I accepted a fare after 2 a.m. She said she lived on Lakeview. But when I checked, Lakeview no longer existed east of Gate. She apologized, disappeared. Later, I found photos in news archive sold crash victim in a white dress. Newspaper forgot name, but drivers didn't. Daniel listened to them. Each voice seemed vested in fear, trauma. None wanted fame, all wanted warning. They sipped cold coffee in silence. The diner's neon buzzed. The world outside felt far. A new face entered crowd, a young college intern named Naveen, working late on a thesis about urban legends. He approached their booth shyly. Naveen, excited whisper, you guys shared about the lady in white in the South Side? He unfurled a photo from his Fonea grainy image of a woman in period white, taken at Resurrection Cemetery in 1982. Naveen, scholar from University of Chicago, said there was a cluster of taxi disappearances in 1982. Death records, blotter logs, 5 vanished drivers. No bodies found, just their last known pickup at midnight. All wore suits. Daniel stared. Sweat beaded on his brow. Vignette 1. The Mistake Street. Around 10:45 p.m., Daniel picked up a man outside a hotel near South Michigan Avenue. The man asked to be dropped at Bleecker Lane, which Daniel hesitated to drive. GPS didn't register. Gently tried to clarify. The man insisted. Daniel canceled fare. But a sense of guilt followed him the third time refusing. Ghost watchers later flagged the street as one that never existed, rumored to be old burial grounds. He felt fortunate. Vignette 2. The white dress at 2 a.m. Around 2:02 a.m. near Michigan Avenue, a woman in white walked along the highway median. She looked fragile, blinking at the traffic. Daniel slowed. She said, "Don't look back." As she stepped off the road, she instantly vanished between cars. Vignette 3. The Lato Night Toll Booth. On Dan Ryan Expressway, Daniel stopped to pay toll at 1:17 a.m. The booth was shuttered, but a woman's voice said, "Good night." No attendant. He blinked, then saw a white sleeve slide past. But as he checked mirror-empty booth, he paused at a red signal near Wacker Drive, lighting a cigarette, though he'd sworn off smoking. He closed his eyes. Memories. A childhood baseball game, Marcus cheering, Elisa packing suitcases, warehouse, pink-tinted sunset, mother's last breath in a hospital bed, father absent from funeral. Each flame of memory sharpened his guilt. The candles, the goodnight kisses, the sunlit promises, they all became illusions. He glanced at the rules note underneath the wheel. He thought, I can't keep punishing myself for what's already lost. He stubbed the cigarette on the console. The window swirled frost. Smoke hissed into night. To ground the terror further, Daniel scrolled through forums in his dinner break. 1994, the South Ashland disappearance. A female driver disappeared after picking up a woman in period clothing. Completed no destination. Later, neighbors on North Ashland claimed seeing a pale bride leaning on passenger door. 2005, the Eastern Graveyard Lane incident. A driver's rear seat mirror fogged when he passed near the cemetery. He reported he looked back and the fare had vanished. The cab cut off in mid-ride. 2013, the tollgate attendant ghost. Drivers paid toll to an empty booth. They heard a thank you, a soft voice, but no one was there when they verified. Each story mirrored Daniel's experiences. Daniel wrestled with empathy. He believed in goodness helping others, but each attempted mercy nearly killed him. He realized the rules were not just superstitions, they were boundaries to preserve self even if cruelty seeped out. He remembered what Elisa told him once, you drive fast because fear of stopping scares you. Now fear was in everything. The night before what would become his final shift, Daniel barely slept. He dreamed of graves opening. He woke at 4 a.m. high with adrenaline, slung his jacket, drove to his cab. At 9:55 p.m., he sat inside, gripped steering wheel, thought, whichever comes, what choice will I prioritize? Survival or fate? Daniel sat in his cab exactly at 2 p.m., heart hammered against ribs. The 4-rule note was soaked and smeared, but the words still pulsed in his mind. Sweat pooled beneath his collar despite the night chill. He switched on the meter. Headlights carved a path through still streets. The air crackled with anticipation. Daniel thought, this is the night. The rules shattered or preserved me, I decide. At exactly 2 a.m., the phone chimed. Caller ID? None. The shrill ring sliced through dark quiet. Daniel paused, breathing stilled. Whispered voice echoing softly. Rules matter. Dead silence. He clenched the wheel. Then, second ring. Follow them or break. Line dropped. Daniel didn't blink. He whispered to himself, "Make your choice." At 2:05 a.m., she stood again at the same corner where he first picked her up. White dress, pale skin, empty gaze. He'd seen this silhouette more than once, and each time dread tightened. She boarded. The meter flicked on before ignition. He glanced at her in rearview mirror. Eyes reflected faintly. Her voice seeped. "Rules matter, save yourself." He inhaled, thoughts wild. The cabin felt heavy. Rule 1, cemetery after 2 a.m. Rule 2, address must exist. Rule 3, don't look back if they disappear. Rule 4, don't accept faceless fare. Daniel fingered the note, now torn and damp. The meter ran, no words, no face, only presence. He thought, she is not fair, she's messenger. But what message? He pulled over at a dark dead end near Oakwood Drive again. Address nowhere to be confirmed. Engine idled. He sighed. If he turned around, he feared collapse. If he continued, he might cross into fate. He reached for keys, then shook head, pulled keychain over knob. He tore the note into jagged strips and dropped them between seats. He looked at her through the mirror. Her eyes glistened. She tilted head slightly. She vanished, slowly fading. Daniel revved engine. He released brake. Car lurched forward. He sped through streets Elm Street, Lincoln, Wacker streetlights blurring, windscreen glistened with rain, mirror refused reflection. He felt tears freeze in the night air. Each road seemed haunted. Every lamp flickered. Every turn echoed whispers. Daniel didn't look back. He reached 5:58 a.m. Pulled into his apartment lot. Engine switched off. No fare recorded. The meter blank. He stepped out. Rain had softened. Dawn pink light crept across glass towers. He held his breath. Inside the apartment, he left keys on table. No newspapers, no faces, only silence. He stared at empty chair and thought, maybe life shrank but fear didn't kill me tonight. He sank into a chair, looked at the window, hesitated. He washed his face. No call came from Elisa. No voice. He didn't expect one. He tapped the table. The note fragments blended with spilled coffee. Each fiber read no more. He allowed tension to dissolve. He opened his laptop. Journal entry. Tonight I faced the rules. I destroyed the note. She disappeared. I drove. I breathed. I exist. Fear remains, but it no longer commands me. He paused, typed more. This story ends, but maybe mine doesn't, because myths are never finished. He closed laptop. Daniel's final act was not a victory over ghosts. It was reclaiming his agency from haunting illusions. The rules once lifelines became chains. Breaking them didn't destroy his safety, it restored his identity. Fear does not own you. Rules form boundaries, but you must also know when they outlive meaning. Empathy isn't always safe. Compassion can attract tragedy when the unknown isn't governed by logic. Loss hides in memory. Real fear often comes not from apparitions, but our refusal to let go. Daniel Weber drove through the city's shadows and past the lines of legend. In the end, survival wasn't subduing the phantom, it was choosing silence over submission. The woman in white was never enemy. She was reflection, a litmus test. And in breaking the rules, Daniel broke free from memory's ghost. Thank you for journeying through Daniel's midnight shift. If this ride unsettled you or made you pause in your rear view, leave a comment. Ride safely. Know your rules. But remember, sometimes survival means changing the game.